It was like a magic carpet that my life was riding on, and it was totally jerked out from under me. I was in free fall.
This is where the end of cancer begins. Stand up with all of us. Stand up.
Big acts of kindness, small acts of kindness, it doesn't matter. The goal is to get them involved and get them doing something.
It really is a symbol of courage, triumph over a disease and being able to celebrate that with all those others.
Every morning I wake up, it's another day.
Production of Immense Possibilities is made possible by the generous support of the Earth and Humanity Foundation, Wendy Selden, Rogue Co-ops, a community-centered collaboration among the Ashland Food Co-op, the Grange Co-op, Rogue Credit Union, and the Medford Food Co-op, Cliff Bar and Company, Elizabeth York, and these additional members of the Immense Possibilities Community Builders Circle.
Welcome to our weekly visit with people who are creating immense possibilities for healthy communities, solutions to all kinds of challenges. There's one health crisis that seems to have more power than any other for bringing people together in our communities to find long-term solutions. Some of the people standing up to be part of this huge movement have faces you'll recognize.
Stand up and start a movement. Stand up for a cure. Stand up to know and say yes.
Gonna rise up, find my direction magnetically. I'm gonna rise up, throw down my ace in the hole.
This is where the end of cancer begins. Stand up with all of us. Stand up. Stand up to cancer.
Tonight we meet a mix of people who are standing up to cancer in a big way, often through the coordination of the American Cancer Society. Joining me now are two of the Society's most committed Southern Oregon volunteers, Tilly Gibbs and Sue Raleigh. And a short disclosure here, Tilly Gibbs and her husband have been contributors to the IP Production Fund. Welcome to you both. Thanks for coming to Immense Possibilities.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Tilly, you've been involved for years as a regional board member at different levels. And I think just about all of us have heard of the American Cancer Society, but would have trouble describing just what it is. So help us. What is it?
It's a big organization that really revolves around use of volunteers in almost every aspect of what they do. One of the ones that is very commonly used is the Reach to Recovery, where breast cancer patients are talking to patients that are recently diagnosed. We have a Look Good, Feel Better program, which a lot of the ladies participate in. We have a service at the Cancer Resource Center to give patients information, support information. We also have a service where we give wigs, hats, scarves, etc. to patients at no cost to them.
You know, I'm betting some people with no experience around cancer don't quite see the full importance of that. You want to say a little more?
Let me give you an example. Recently, a young lady came in, a lady who was in her early 50s, had recently been diagnosed with cancer, and knew she was going to go through chemotherapy and lose her hair. She thought she was fine. She thought she was stable. She thought she was tough. She was going to get through it. Till a few days later when I spoke with her, and she was home and her hair was actually coming out in great handfuls. And if you are bald, that something very bad has happened to you. So she thought she could handle it, but the reality was that she did not want to go out in public with a bald head. So we were able to fit her with a couple of wigs and some hats and scarves, and she said it made a tremendous difference in just being accepted into society without people staring at her.
Sue Raleigh, would you tell us some of your story and how you came to be involved with this work?
I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2001. And at that time, you know, I was extremely healthy. I was athletic. I had a great diet. I felt like, you know, it was absolutely, it must have been, there must be some mistake. It was like a magic carpet that my life was riding on, and it was totally jerked out from under me. I was in free fall, and it was the scariest time ever. I found that I was trying to make sure that my husband was okay, who was worrying, that my mom was okay, you know, that everybody else was still okay in my life. And I needed someone outside of that to really give me the kind of support I needed. So a few years after I was treated, and successfully at this point still, I heard about the American Cancer Society's Reach to Recovery program and became a trained volunteer.
So what are you doing in that program?
So what we do is, as a volunteer, is to be able to provide, first of all, access to information to make sure that the individual has absolutely what she needs to make the best informed decision possible. In addition to access to information, we provide emotional support and hopefully can help other women have the confidence to know that they can cope with this, they can go through the treatment, and that they'll have more in their lives. If they ever want to call me, you know, I give them my cell phone number, and I can track with them
and
their progress.
Get calls at all hours?
Yeah. I tell them, you know, I have some sleeping time, but otherwise, you know. And sometime I'll hear from someone, you know, months or even years later of how they're doing. And I really value that.
Do you think there's something distinctive about breast cancer among all of cancer in terms of motivating and mobilizing volunteers?
Part of it is that we've got, you know, 2.5 million women that are survivors of breast cancer now in the nation. And so we're talking to each other, and we have access to media in ways that we didn't before. And so I think there's just there's several organizing principles that really are at play for us to say, let's get it out.
Sue, I've heard a little bit of controversy in this whole area of battling cancer, that it needs to go upstream more. There are some people who are quite solidly convinced that the prevalence of certain chemicals in our environment, food system, industrial system, are a big reason cancer has gotten so prevalent. And they say, I'm going to put my time and resources into political work, legislative work, to change regulation, and so we don't have to deal with victims of cancer. Well, what do you say when someone says that?
Great, go for it. And you know, I think that some of us, we all have skills. We all have skills to be effective in battling breast cancer, battling prostate, battling any kind of cancer. But the big difference is that some of us have skills being more personal, in personal one-on-one interaction with patients, and some people are really skilled at the policy level. So I think, luckily, there are a lot of people who are skilled in research. I think that cancer is such a complex thing that it's really great that we have folks working at all levels of it.
Right now, what are some of the sharpest needs for volunteers, people who don't have particular sets of skills?
There's a program here called Road to Recovery. Road to Recovery is people offering to transport patients from their home or wherever they're living to their treatment and back home again. It might be helping in the Cancer Resource Center, it might be putting stamps on envelopes, it might be raising money, but there are a number of different ways to help.
The opportunity to see the kind of gratitude in someone's eyes and have that feeling of relief that they are so grateful that there's someone to listen to, someone to find other resources that can help them. I mean, that's huge. That's just been such an impact on my own life, and I'm really grateful for that.
Tilly Gibbs and Sue Raleigh are volunteers with the American Cancer Society in Southern Oregon. Thank you so much for the work that you do and for telling us about it here on the program.
It's been great. Thank you for the chance. It's a privilege to help people. It's a privilege to be here to talk to you.
Keep up the good work.
My name is Meredith. I'm 37. I have stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. When you have cancer, being brave is waking up in the morning. I'm not sitting still in bed all day unless I don't have a choice. It's taught me not to sweat the small stuff. I try to live every moment now. And when you're lying in bed, you're always wondering, where is it attacking? Is it under my armpit? Are you in the bone that hurts today? So it's made me scared, but instead of hiding from it, I tend to use being scared to my strength. Every morning I wake up, I think I'm brave. Every morning I wake up, it's another day.
One organization above all others has made the battle against breast cancer a national movement and mobilized tens of thousands of volunteers in the process. Originally called the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, it's more simply known as Komen these days, and its Director of Programs and Operations for Oregon and Southwest Washington is Margaret Klein. Margaret, welcome to Immense Possibilities.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm glad to be here.
Tell us how and why Komen got started.
So Komen is a story of hope. In 1982, it really started as a global movement. It's a story of both hope and love between two sisters. 7 years ago, my sister was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, only survived 5 weeks. And then 3 years later, my brother was diagnosed with lung cancer and only survived 6 weeks. It really caused me to consider where I was in terms of finding meaning in my life. And it drew me to where I believe I was called to be, which was at Susan G. Komen, working with survivors to really improve lives.
Do you think breast cancer is distinctive in mobilizing passionate, committed volunteers?
The incidence of breast cancer in Oregon is every week, 70 women will hear the words, "You have cancer," and every week 10 will die. Nationally, it's 636 people every day who learn they have breast cancer, and 140 people will die each day of breast cancer. It is just so prevalent, and I think that's why it's a disease that's easier to mobilize around because we all are aware of it.
What kind of volunteer opportunities do you have?
Most people are aware of our Race for the Cure, and certainly there's volunteer opportunities there, but we have a great deal of education and outreach that we do in the community. Some survivors and non-survivors, those co-survivors, they'll actually come and volunteer in our office and are involved in kind of just the day-to-day activity that happens in a busy office of a nonprofit.
I first heard of Komen when I ran in a Race for the Cure, and I know I'm not alone in that. What has made that part of your program so successful, and what's the lesson there about enlisting people in a cause like this?
It really is a symbol of courage, triumph over a disease and being able to celebrate that with all those others, the fellow survivors, the patients, and the families, and those co-survivors who have walked alongside. It's really an amazing event.
Margaret, thank you for your work, and thanks for sharing it with us here on Immense Possibilities.
Great. Thank you, Jeff, for this opportunity.
Margaret Klein is Director of Programs and Operations for Komen in Oregon and Southwest Washington.
What hasn't changed, and I hope and frankly think will never change, is the passion of our volunteers toward the mission. That's the key to everything we do, and I doubt that will ever change. I hope it never does.
Last season, we introduced you to Sparrow Clubs, which has been mobilizing a younger set of caring people to stand up against cancer and other life-threatening diseases. It's a pleasure to have back on the program Matt Sampson, who is the Oregon Director of Sparrow Clubs, along with Haley Maddox, who is a sophomore at North Medford High School. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for coming to Immense Possibilities.
Thank you. It's so good to be back.
Matt, remind us about the work of Sparrow Clubs.
It's a youth-based nonprofit organization that exists to empower and really to set the stage to inspire and compel kids and young people to look beyond themselves and make a difference in the lives of local children in medical need.
How do you do that?
Well, we adopt children in medical need. We call them sparrows, and we adopt them to public and private schools, and someone like me goes in and as a motivational speaker and presents the child and their story to the entire student body during an assembly, and then challenges the kids to make a difference and to raise money for that child through sponsored community service and fundraising projects.
It's not easy to agree to do that, is it, to be a sparrow?
It's really not. These stories are hard. And these families that partner with us, and I do say partner because these families that become sparrow families, they're not charity cases, they're our partners. They're allowing us to tell their stories because they believe that by doing so, they're going to make an impact on the lives of other kids. I mean, our goal in Sparrow Clubs is to help change youth culture from the inside out. And our families, they are benefiting financially and emotionally from being a sparrow, but they're giving back so much more than they're receiving.
Now, Haley, you're a sophomore at North Medford High School, and you've been adopted as a sparrow there. Would you tell us your story? How did that come to be?
Sometime around January of last year, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called myofibroblastic sarcoma. We found out that it had metastasized to my lungs and possibly my lymph nodes. And so here we are.
So was it hard to make the decision to be a sparrow and be completely public with your ailment and your health challenge?
It was a little bit because, you know, it's my school that I go to. And walking down the hall, I felt like people would stare at me and kind of outcast me a little bit or focus more on me, and I'm not used to being the center of attention.
So you have been down on the floor of that gymnasium with hundreds and hundreds of kids cheering for you, on your side, pulling for you.
Getting the kids involved is so powerful. It's different than just writing a check.
And while many know her as classmate or friend, now everyone knows her as a fighter.
Walking down on stage, I mean, I was nervous, and then seeing everybody stand up, pledging that they would help me, that was really emotional. Because knowing that even though those people didn't know me, they knew my story and they were willing to help me and support, and they cared. So it was really emotional.
Tell us a little bit about what your days are like now. How are you feeling? How are you doing?
They're easier because I don't feel like I'm holding something in. I don't feel like I have this big secret that nobody knows about. And walking through the halls now at school, I can just look at somebody and flash a smile, and they'll flash a smile back.
Do you think some people can be awkward or nervous about talking to you about your situation? You know, they mean well, they'd like to do something that's helpful, but don't really know why, don't really understand cancer. What would you say to somebody maybe who's feeling awkward like that and maybe holds back from getting involved?
You know, I'm a normal teenager. I'm just like you. It's just I happen to be going through something that not a lot of people understand.
And you welcome conversation with them if they have questions or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I think it's something that should be talked about. You know, a lot of people shut it out or hide it, and it needs to be out there. People need to know what's going on.
Matt, is there anything else about Haley we ought to know?
Where do I begin? I don't know if Haley even understands the impact that she's making. I have to tell you a story. We had her assembly at North Medford on November 14th, and later that night I was at home. I was making dinner for my kids. The doorbell rings, and I go and I open the door, and there's two high school boys, teenage boys, on my doorstep. And they jumped right in and they said, "Hi, we're out in the neighborhood. We're looking for community service to do for Sparrow Clubs. Here's two high school boys on a Friday night that could be out doing anything that teenagers typically do on a Friday night. But what are these two boys doing? These two young men, I should say. They're out in the neighborhood going door to door asking to serve people because they were so moved by Haley's story." I got their names. I asked them, I said, do you know Haley? And they said, "Well, yeah, we know who she is. One said, I have a class with her, but I had no idea she had cancer until today." And he said, it makes sense. I wish I would have said something. And that was so powerful to me because these two young men, their lives were changed by Haley's story, and she didn't even know it. All she did was allow her story to be told.
What do you think when you hear that, Haley?
It means so much that like he said, they could be out doing anything, but they decided to go around and help me. So
you're having an impact on a lot of people. What's the benefit, Matt, of more open and brave conversation about cancer in a community?
I think that leads to more action, that leads to more involvement. When people don't understand something, they typically won't get involved. That's the benefit of Haley telling her story, is it gets it out there. As you said earlier, some people might be really scared to talk about it, but when you have a school assembly and it's up there and her story's in a slideshow and her story's being talked about and we're explaining it and she's explaining it, I think that makes people more comfortable to approach her, more comfortable to talk about it with their parents, with their friends, and usually that kind of talk leads to some kind of involvement or some kind of action. Big acts of kindness, small acts of kindness, it doesn't matter. The goal is to get them involved and get them doing something.
Anything that you can do will help. Even if it's the littlest thing, like Matt said, it'll still help.
Haley Maddox is a sophomore at North Medford High School. She's been adopted as a sparrow there. Haley, thank you so much for being willing to come on and share your story with us. All the best to you and your family. We're pulling for you.
Thank you.
Matt Sampson is the Oregon Director of Sparrow Clubs. Matt, thank you for the work you're doing. Thanks for coming back to tell us about it on the program.
You're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me back.
That's it for this edition of Immense Possibilities. You can find out more about the program or send us suggestions at immensepossibilities.org, or visit our Facebook page and like and share us there. Thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Golden. Until next time, please do what you can do. Thanks for watching to learn about tonight's Immense Possibility. You can watch any of our past programs anytime at immensepossibilities.org.